Too much, not enough time for networking, huh? I knew it. I knew it. I told him it should have been 2 hours. Thank you so much for coming back. Thank you for hanging in here. I hope you all are getting as excited by all the great things we have to learn from each other as I am. Let me say that as people-centered businesses, we know that cooperatives are the best vehicle to advance DEI work. And if you've been joining us for this conversation and these conversations for any amount of time, you know that last year we heard from a lot of co-ops that are doing really great work to drive inclusion and offer a path to racial justice. But we were also reminded that DEI work is truly a journey and not a destination. And we also, as cooperators, know that we move what we measure. So we've got a panel here to help share their thoughts on how we measure and report on success and progress in terms of DEI. And I'm going to please join me in welcoming Shantae Edwards, Allison Powers, and Renee Sadie-White to share their insights and inspiration.
We're an Oreo.
Said it again.
We're an Oreo.
Yeah, look at us here, everyone. Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
Oh, wait, is this the after lunch special? Is that what's happening right now? Okay, so we're just kind of, in welcoming you all to today's session. Let's give it up one more time for Allison and Renee, y'all. And so just as introduced, my name is Shantae J. Edwards, and I am so honored to be sitting with you all to talk about DEI from a measuring standpoint, right? And if you don't know, now you will know, if you didn't check the Hoover app, Allison and Renee, they're in there, right? And so who are they, you say? Well, Allison is the Director of Economic Opportunities at Capital Impact Partners, and Renee is the President and CEO at African American Credit Union Coalition. Let's give it up again, y'all. And so this is gonna be a session like no other, because here's the thing, right? We're gonna be talking, well, they'll be talking, I'll be probably asking questions. You all are gonna be talking, engaging with each other. And while we are talking about DEI, we'll be definitely talking about how to move this forward and being in action. And speaking of action, in this session, I kind of like in setting the tone, questions, right? By a show of hands, how many of you all have submitted questions for this session on the Hoover app? We have one. Okay, and let the church say amen. Okay, so you can do that throughout the session. And so what we want to say is that as you see them in conversation, if there's something that you are asking or want to know, please go to the Hoover app, check the agenda, click on the agenda, click on us, and then go ahead and submit your questions. Toward the end, we'll be asking questions, and we're going to have a bit of fun. And if you're down to have fun and talk about DEI, let me hear you say, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting there. And so let me set the tone for you right now, okay? According to a recent post-pandemic survey of corporate CEOs, 95% of company CEOs say DEI is a focus area, but only 44% have a formal strategy. Why isn't the powerful inspiration from the summer of 2020 that fueled DEI rhetoric driving real lasting change in the workplace? Could the solution be as digestible in finding a regimented path to encourage the current leaders to seek professional growth by intentionally embracing their discomfort? Or maybe the energy behind the DEI fatigue, I said it, is fueled by comfort and continuing to cling to the old normal. So let's start to make good on their DEI promises. Leaders must first understand where these challenges live. Where do they lie, y'all? Because in this session, we're about to discuss 3 areas to apply actionable solutions for co-ops to be able to normalize. Now, we know that word is trending, right? Normalize. So we're just going to add that to actively being intentional around DEI as it relates to culture and operations. Allison, Renee, your bios are in the Hoover app, so I actually have a question to break the ice. What's bringing you joy this week?
That I'm getting ready to go to Africa, and I figured out that I can only bring so many things, and so I've packed my suitcase, and it's only 26 pounds.
Well then, you better flex, okay.
For 8 days, with the formal.
Let's give it up for that handsome, y'all. I'm saying, skills, strategy. What about you, Allison?
What's giving me joy? Well, I'm from this wonderful city, Washington, D.C., and the weather has been beautiful. And so I made a promise to myself that every morning this week I would get up early and be outside and kind of just feel the fresh air, feel nature for an hour before I started work. And it's been wonderful.
Okay, now let's clap it up for Allison, y'all. And clap it up for yourselves, too. Thank you for that. And so in transition and talking about this piece, right, so joy, something that really brings me joy is talking about culture. And so the first thing I want to be able to talk about is culture and policy misalignment. So I have a question, right, because there's closed culture and then there's open culture. There's also misalignment, too. And in that, with the closed culture, there's fear. While it may seem initially open, this type of system fosters a suspicion of new ideas and people. Then there's open culture, which requires boundaries. I'm going to say that again, boundaries. But instead of rule keepers enforcing a set of legal restrictions, people are guided by boundaries which value human beings. Not only as new ideas welcome, but new people are welcome too. Then there's the policy misalignment. And with that one is where the DEI employee group is staffed with mid-level and entry-level staff who lack enforcement accountability. The DEI consultant or executive does not have staff support nor a budget for activation. And I'm gonna stop there. So those are the three categories, right? So I have a question. What is an example on how a co-op's governance and operational practice can unintentionally or intentionally create a closed culture?
Okay. So we see that there's a recent CUNA and NAFCU, a part of credit union system, they're trying to merge. A closed culture would be not having everybody at the table. So as they're talking about the merger, they are looking at who's going to be on their board. Board is all about governance. So if you can't expect to have a new organization do new different things if you're still doing the old things. And so in the selection of who's going to be on the board, it was by tenure. So that disqualified everybody who is of the colored majority to be part of the new board. And so looking at it, it was unintentional, I'm sure. I'm sure they looked at how they could be as complete as possible, but it's not. But we've been assured that those things will look differently because it's a work in progress. And so I'm hopeful that our voices will be heard to see inclusion. It's not so much about diversity, but inclusion.
Allison, what about for you? Thank you, Renee.
I would say there's a lot of listening that needs to happen first before anything can start. And if you have someone who's creating policy without listening, whether it means, listening to your co-op members, listening to your community, listening to your staff, then it's not going to go very far. And so I think having that first step of gathering information, setting a baseline, understanding where everyone is coming from, and understanding, where everyone is in this process. And then there has to be a real engagement and real mandate from whatever leadership body. It can't be done, like you said, in committee, or we're not going to put real resources, or we're not really going to put real time and energy into this. But I think before you do that, first the listening.
The listening. And you know, I want to kind of double back over to you, Renee. You made an emphasis on inclusion and diversity. Can you share a little bit more about your thoughts with that?
So for instance, right, using that same example, the name of the organization is America's Credit Union. Well, for me, it sounds like Make America Great Again. And if they had me at the table, or someone who looked like me at the table, they would have gotten that response, right? And so it's about inclusion, because diversity has become a bad word for some people. So in order to change the narrative, expound on what it really means. What does that look like? Inclusion means we have everybody at the table. We think about everything. I was reminded at our conference that we had some people who had hearing challenges. So we decided we had an interpreter this year. We are the most diverse organization in the credit union system, and we fall short as well. So we want to include everybody as much as possible, and I just don't think that we don't think about it from that standpoint. But if you have people around you, the more diverse your table is, the more information you can get, and the more people you can reach.
And I love that, because in thinking about DEI and how it was trending heavy on the 2020 with what happened with George Floyd, and how the world shifted, this conversation around inclusion, that belonging, and knowing that folks are going to show up differently every single time. And so in keeping that energy and thinking about for closed cultures, right, what would you all recommend on how to diagnose a closed culture?
Well, the first thing I would do is to be ready to not be offended. And that happens. Anytime you're looking at trying to create team with anything or anybody, there's going to be some tension. You can't think about joining people together without thinking that there's not going to be any bumps. There's going to be bumps. And so being open, as Allison said, being open to the listening, and listening from different people who you've never thought about listening from. Because if you're listening to the same people saying the same stuff, nothing's going to change.
Thank you for that. And what about you, Allison?
Yeah, in a similar vein, setting expectations. This is going to be, if it's easy, you're not doing it right. You know, if it feels warm and fuzzy and nobody's being challenged and nobody's being pushed, then it's probably, you know, you need to get a new process, and being able to set a baseline for language. How do we talk about this? How can we be honest and be safe spaces to have real conversations, you know, level setting on words like white supremacy, and really calling out the historical systems and what's happening, and making sure everybody's on the same page with, this is how we're going to have discussions, this is how we're going to be open, we've all got to confront our own biases, and it's not going to be comfortable, and it's going to be work. And that work cannot only be borne by, you know, people of color. It has to be, the weight has to be carried by everyone, and you can't be, you know, expect people to kind of bring you along on your learning journey. You have to take that upon yourself.
And I love that you brought that in, right? Because it isn't everybody. Everybody can get it, energy, and everybody in that support, and thinking about process and progress and policy. And with you all's experience and thinking about the policy piece around that, what would be a policy recommendation that you all have in shaping specifically for empowering an open culture?
I would start with making sure that the research is done on facts and not opinions. That's part of many of the problems that we have, is that people have an opinion of someone that they know nothing about. They're influenced by images of the media or a bad experience here, there, or the other. But I think that it's important to look at it from a factual space. So when you have the facts, like we know that the colored majority is going to, the landscape of our country is going to change by 2030. Ignoring that fact is going to hinder us. But if we stick to that fact, if we learn that, then we can govern properly. We can make the policies that's going to correct that or correct behavior that we haven't done in the past.
And you? Thank you, Renee.
So I really think that, you know, DEI needs to lead to something. It needs to lead to policies, and it needs to lead to action. So DEI, you know, having somebody who is on staff to do this and making it, so we have corporate goals around DEI, but it's already written into everybody's job description. It's written into everybody's goals.
Love it.
So it's not, it's part of people's jobs, and it's not something you make time for. It's something that's part of your job. So that's kind of the first thing. And then it's supposed to translate into strategy. And strategy is a lens where you make decisions on what you do as an organization or a co-op, or, you know, we're a CDFI, community development financial institution. So I'll give an example. So we were one of the CDFIs that came to the table in Detroit after the bankruptcy, and we were, you know, supposed to deploy funds especially for affordable housing. And so Detroit, which is a city that's 80% Black, we realized that all of the developers were white. And people didn't live in Detroit. They weren't in the communities where we were lending to. And so we were like, all right, this does not fit our DEI goals and our mission around racial equity, so what do we do? So first we created a program, training, technical assistance, peer networking. We were kind of trying to do community listening and figure out like, what do people, there was a lot of neighborhood developers, but how do we get them on the table for the big deals, the big transactions, the one where the capital was really flowing through. So we created this program, the Equitable Development Initiative, or EDI, and then we realized that wasn't enough. We also needed loan products, because people were like, oh great, I have this training, and I've got this mentorship and these peer networks, but I don't have the capital at the end of the day. So then we had to create loan products on top of that. So in Detroit, our lending to developers of color went up from 8% to 50% because of this program. And so it was a real, you know, a real example of how the DEI flowed into the policy, flowed into the programs, but the programs needed to be better. They didn't hit the mark the first time. They had to be revamped, and that program has since been replicated in DC and the Bay Area and Dallas and a few other places. So, you know, just really letting it, we can't be afraid to make policy, make action, and make real goals to get there.
Yeah, I know y'all want to clap for that, right? Go ahead, clap, go ahead, do that there. And the reason why is because you're talking about the action, right? How are we showing up when we say what we want to do? How do we actually do it? The how. And if I can make a request to have someone available with the mic, because I'm going to bring it to the field in just a second. Y'all, the field, just so we clear. Y'all got it? Okay, cool. You made a good point in talking about like the measuring, right? Because in going into kind of this next piece of the segment, I want to talk a little bit about insufficient measuring systems. Because people talk a lot, but they don't do a lot, right? Now, Renee, I just seen you make that face because,
I'm going to let Allison talk first.
Okay. So what I wanted to do, I'm going to set the tone real quick, okay? And so in that, we were looking at kind of 4 different practices that people have done to be corrective. Now, I'm going to use this me personally because I don't believe in the correction, but let's talk more later. But thinking about the evaluation of blind spots. And so these 4 categories, right, showing up in talent acquisition, learning and development, performance management, and compensation. I'm going to let y'all sit with that for a second. And so when thinking about talent acquisition, right, are there certain stages where underrepresented groups are falling off in disproportionate numbers compared to majority groups?
In the credit union system, there's probably about $450 billion asset credit unions, and there's only 14 African Americans that are CEOs. So I would say yes.
Okay, all right, so the numbers don't lie. I'm gonna move to learning and development. Who gets selected to participate in conferences or project teams?
C-suite,
Mm-hmm.
VPs, some mid-level managers, but the people who probably need it most aren't the people who are probably going.
And why is that, you think?
Probably people don't see value yet. They need perks for the people who are working really hard at the top.
I'll say we're very intentional about hiring. We're a Black-led CDFI. Our CFO is Black, as well as our head of HR, as well as the head of our board. So which again does not mean we have it all figured out. It just means that when we look at our staff, we think of, it's not just the staff as a whole, it's who's in the C-suite and who is who's in management. So it's not just, you can have a really diverse staff, but all the leadership do not reflect. So you kind of have to look at all the different segmentation of it. You have to look at who you're hiring and what you're really valuing during that hire. Like if you're working in community, and are you putting 5 advanced degrees above, really understanding or being bilingual or being able to, you were born and raised in a certain community. Like, how are you hiring? Who are you hiring? And what that process is, and making sure that the compensation is equal. One thing that we did, and I know not all kind of co-ops or smaller organizations can do this, but we hire an outside firm to look and make sure everything is equitable, kind of in industry, but also among gender, race. You're being the same as the employees, and it's all outside, so you don't see kind of what they're measuring. But I know I got a call from HR a few years ago to say I got a raise that I didn't ask for because I was not being paid equitably, and I had no idea, and it made me feel really good because
more money, more money, more money. Yes.
Right, because it made me feel valued, and it made me feel like I don't know who I was being raised to meet up to kind of what that entailed, but the fact that it was rectified gave me a lot of confidence. So I think that just having checks and balances, that we're all going to come with our biases, and we might not be meaning to, but we might be underpaying people or not giving people the opportunity to move up within the organization.
I appreciate that. And so what I'm going to actually do for you all here is I'm going to ask the question, and it's going to be yes or no. So you raise your hand yes, or when I say no, you raise your hand. Y'all cool with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this question goes with performance management. And as Allison kind of like transitioning to that, talking about performance management and compensation. So the question is, raise your hand if you believe that people managers give the same feedback to employees regardless of gender or ethnicity. Okay, I wanted to do that, right? That level of discomfort, because we know what's in the room and it's not an elephant. And thinking about the lenses and thinking about what it is and talking about performance management, and now I'm gonna take it to compensation. So one of the things that we were able to find, or kind of like in talking about, was thinking about policies. Saying that kind of standardized policy and processes for setting initial compensation. Historically, do you believe that it's illegal in many states to use market data to set the hiring range for each role? Interesting thought, right? I'm gonna let y'all sit with that, because some folks still do it. And with this question that I'm gonna put out back to Allison and Renee, in thinking about measuring or insufficient measuring assessments, what would you say would be inclusive measuring assessments that HR can focus on?
One of the things that when you're building your team, what does your team look like? Especially we're cooperative working with communities. Do your team, do they look like who you're serving? That's the first thing. So that needs to be a criteria. So if I'm someone who is doing outreach, I need to be making sure that I'm outreaching to the right people. And our products and services matter for those people. Are you making sure that whatever your work is, that it's for the community that you say you serve? And how are you measuring that? Does it look like we have 50% or we have 25 people, whatever that looks like, but that it is measured and not just a picture, that it is measured.
Any thoughts, Allison? Thank you, Renee. You agree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a that it is measured part.
Yeah.
Some of the work that I do within Start.coop and thinking about our entrepreneurs and how we are looking at our co-ops and thinking about early stage and businesses has been influenced for me around being an executive coach and leadership, kind of working with other founders who are building companies. And the question is, what is your culture? What is your culture conversation? What are you saying around your company, and how are you being intentional? Now, just don't hire just to hire. Of course, there's talent. Of course, there's color and gender. And there's also a slew of other things. But really, in being intentional about how you're doing it will help with that, right? The motivation. And so the last part we're going to talk about, before I take it back to the field, is in thinking about motivation.
Can I share a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
You
I had
better.
a story years ago. I think I was in my 30s. I'm 62 now. And I went for a job interview that lasted 8 hours. They never fed me. And I remember exactly what I had on. I had a really sharp gold jacket and a black skirt. I had it going on.
Yes.
And I'll never forget, Elizabeth Chandler was the HR manager, and she said to me in her pilgrim shoes, no judgment, what she said to me was, how do you feel being interviewed for a company that is known for not hiring blacks into management? And my response was brilliant, and I got the job. Well, that's why you need me. Yeah.
I need some more claps happening, the confidence, right? Because that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that,
Yeah.
definitely. And in thinking about that, kind of when it comes to the workforce, right, and certain things as it relates to race and gender, and folks be knowing, right? It's not like you don't know who your company is sometimes. And as we're building out our cooperatives and looking at our companies and wanting to be intentional, we're also challenged with ethics and morals. Unconscious bias, a cynical workforce, the level of energy that causes discomfort. And in thinking about that, and kind of bringing it to you all, I'm curious of your thoughts in thinking about a cynical workforce. And with that, meaning around a cycle where employees will naturally become dubious about the co-op's willingness and ability to make real change. This also includes, for that, cynicism around identity, race, gender, ability, LGBTQIA+, immigration status, accessibility needs, neurodiversity, caretakers, etc. Unconscious bias, which, by a show of hands, how many of you all don't know about unconscious bias? No judgment. Because we know. And so in thinking about that, right, for us and sharing with you, there was a report from Grant Thornton in 2018 where 50% of senior leaders believe DEI is important. Only 13% of them, though, with the organization, have established a DEI initiative. But we knew this already, right? That level of unconscious bias that we know that's in our face, and being able to make change and real change and be around action, it's not just about individuals, but the value of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion itself. Many leaders undermine their own efforts because it starts with you, human. And when you're taking that in as you lead in the C-suite, and for you all and what you've experienced, the question I have that I want to bring to you all is, unconscious biases are a well-traveled topic. What are some nuances to the impacts of unconscious bias that we can add?
Say that one more time.
Run it back.
Yes, please.
Unconscious bias or unconscious biases are well-traveled topics, or it's a well-traveled topic. What are some nuances to the impacts of unconscious bias that we can add?
I can kick it off. First of all, I don't know how many of you were in the session about AI yesterday, but that was really, really informative. And one thing they were talking about unconscious bias, they were talking about AI and how AI isn't necessarily, it doesn't have opinions. It's not, inherent. It doesn't have inherent bias, but the people who program it do, right? The humans who are inputting the programs and creating this code, they do. So, what happens when you look up CEO, right? What happens when you type in urban? What happens when, you look for what a doctor is and who they look like? Why does facial recognition work for some people and not others? Why are all of our assistants, Alexa and who's giving us directions, why are they all female? Like all these things are programmed by humans. And all humans have unconscious bias. We all have been raised by the media and television and from a very, very young age being programmed to think certain things. And so we have to deprogram ourselves, and it's really hard. And so the first step, kind of admitting and having open conversations about that and moving on. And I'll say one of the nuances that we've been talking about and thinking about a lot is remote work and how, for our organization, we still have offices and we still go into the offices, but a lot of what we do is remote, and we have a lot of new employees. And so getting to know people on these, through a screen where you don't have the personal interactions, you don't know about, your family and your kid and what our commonalities are, and just more you as a person, I think it's something we have to even work harder to overcome and to create safe spaces, because it's hard. It's easy to hide behind the screen. And it's something we have to work through. I don't have the answers, but I just think it's a nuance that we have to think about in the work.
So like that's a whole hashtag behind the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Allison. Renee?
I have no comment.
Okay. It's levels to it, y'all. And the thing about it is that, it starts with you. Discomfort. It's hard looking in the mirror and saying that you are something that you don't want to be. That you don't want nobody saying your name and attaching it to you, to that thing that makes other people feel uncomfortable. But if we're really about change, we got to move that change. And that's something in my work and kind of in training and community and development. It's truly around starting with yourself. What work have you done? Hashtag shadow work, but we won't get into that. Seeing the darkest parts of yourself and knowing that, especially in leadership, when you're working with different folks, the remote learning, working remotely being a thing, and how folks have been finding themselves in a different identity since we all experience a global health crisis. Integration of life and work, that's a lot. And we all barely hanging on. And then you got to bring it to work. And so thinking about that intentionality, right? And so I'm going to close it out with this piece before we transition over to questions from the field and or experiences shared around the cynical workforce, okay? So earlier I talked about it, I laid the groundwork, and it's actually a topic that is not often discussed. Now, we're not rushing past unconscious bias because we all know. And it's kind of a call to action that if you haven't checked yourself, check yourself and your friends. With cynical workforce, there are two different angles to cynicism. The workforce demographic that wants both commitment and action to DEI initiatives. Hey, let's get excited. And then there's the workforce demographic that fears being excluded or dismissed/diminished as a result of commitment and action to DEI initiatives. Yeah, letting that sit in the work. So my question to the both of you is, how do measurements of DEI initiatives and clear communication of the process help to recruit supporters out of these cynical workforce groups?
I'm all about walking the talk. And if you don't walk the talk, especially young people who want to be at your organization, if you have purpose, cooperatives have purpose. And so in order to get the young people to come and be and play with us, because work should be play, especially as a co-op, it should be play. We've got to make sure that we're engaging. We've got to make sure that we want to invest in them as well, but making sure that we are being true to what we say we are as co-ops. And if we can't do that, why be here, right? So being true to the mission of your organization, the purpose that you were founded for, and doing that. And if you can express that in a way that people get it and understand it, they'll want to be a part of you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think the measurements are really important, and creating space and goals and figuring out what programs are going to get there. And I think also just creating space for conversation. And we've done, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have probably done a lot of these exercises too. There's a card game and there's all these different things. But one of the best things we ever did at one of our offsites is we were sitting in a room like this, and we put a timeline of the past 100 years. And everybody had to work in small groups and think about policies over the past 100 years that were, really impacted the United States, like whether it's Brown versus Board of Education or the GI Bill or the Highway Act or, whatever. And you went and you put it up on the timeline. And then you had to go and put whether above or below the timeline, whether it helped or hurt your family personally, this particular policy. And then you also had to mark on the timeline when your family bought their first house or property.
What if that's never happened?
Right, could be. And so then we walked around, and the markers we got depended on what race or identity we identified with. And so, there's one thing to say, okay, this is a history lesson, and this is, kind of rethinking what you learned in school. It's another thing to walk around and look at this timeline. And these are our colleagues, and these are our friends. And these are how the systems that we're still dealing with today have impacted over, our generation, our grandparents, our this is not hundreds of years ago, this is today. And so things like that really bring some people on board and really give this sort of visual and experience learning of this is our lives, this is our history, and then where does, and then you start the discussion from there. So, just things like thinking outside of the box.
And even thinking about that too, like in what you shared, it just made me think about when I'm teaching my students at NYU, right? So I teach a social entrepreneurship course, and when we get into the conversation around building social enterprises, the historical pieces, because a lot of folks want to save folks and they don't need to save folks. Just saying. And when it comes down to the DEI conversation, it's really around the conversation around the why, but also going back to the who you are and where you come from. And so typically in the DEI, I add the B on there, right? And belonging. Renee, you talk in that belonging. And so in thinking about these initiatives and being intentional around how are you creating safe spaces or a container for the folks doing the work. And we have a question that had come up from the Hoover app. I want to say ho, but I'm on. You got it. And thinking about co-ops, right? And so one of the questions is, how can co-ops incorporate the DEI, add the B, efforts into the fabric of their governance models?
One, being intentional. Again, producing the information factually so that you can agree on it. Board of Directors' responsibility, and board service is my passion, 30 years training for United Way. But it's important that you know why you're doing it. So the facts say, and I'm making up statistics because I'm not a stats woman, other than those $14 billion credit union presidents. Anyway, so when you're looking at the fact, and then you make the policy because of the fact. If you can see that there's a lacking there, you're being intentional about not overcoming it, but correcting it. It's not about overcoming it, it's about correcting it. How do we course correct? And that's, I think, this is globally where we are. How are we course correcting?
That overcome, correct. Because that's how we shift the narrative. That's how we shift the conversation. And also, this is how we go back to this intergenerational conversation. Because the babies, y'all, you know, the ones that are coming after us, and what it is that we're creating for them. And so in thinking about the DEIB efforts, I'm adding the B, y'all. They didn't tell me to do that. How do we measure it for non-diverse communities?
Looking at we just automatically think about race.
Exactly.
We automatically think about race. So last year, I was asked to do something in Indiana at the Indiana Credit Union League, and I walked into a room to do diversity, and I didn't see a lot of diversity, so I had to create it. And so I did things like the people who were blonde, the people who were blue-eyed, ages, thoughts, what were their backgrounds, culture, what sports teams they liked. So doing those types of exercises let them see that even though they looked the same to me, pale, it was, and I was kind of scared, but I was treated so well there that I'm going back in October, at the end of October, to do another session. But it's where you're showing the diversity of thought, the diversity of age. Like on my team, I have 2 Latinas, one who's in her 60s and one who's in her 20s, and I've got 2 men, one who's 40 and one who's 24. So we've got that type of diversity in age, diversity in thought, diversity in culture.
Yes.
And the young people now are so intentional that you've got to give them purpose. You've got to give them something that they can hang with, and you've got to invest in them and allow them to have a voice at your table. In our break room, formerly Mike's break room, it says everyone has a seat at our table. And if you lead like that, the generation that's coming behind us will do better.
I have 2 teenagers, so the young people always have a seat at my table. Sometimes I wish I could have a little break, but.
Hey, yo, let's clap it up for tables, right? The ones y'all sitting at, y'all don't want to clap it up? Clap it up for tables, yeah? Okay, good. Because here's the thing, right? You all are the table, right? You have offerings, opportunities. And when you bring that into the spaces for inclusion, belonging, diversity, and equity, there's the intentionality behind it. And so in thinking about the voice part, and if I can bring this to the field real quick, I have a question for someone in the field. And so the question is, how have you all in co-ops, in your cooperative, how have you communicated diversity and inclusion efforts to your stakeholders and the public? I got a hand over here. I got a mic coming, and there it is.
Hope, hello. I'm Sassy. Hi. Thank you all for your work, seen and unseen, in solidarity with you. One thing that we've done, I've been a member owner of 3 different worker co-ops and a bunch of housing co-ops, but I'll pull an example from the most recent worker co-op I was a part of. We had a moment where white supremacy and privilege was in the room, and it was impacting how we were doing a program and who was leading that program and how that program was going. And we did the resolution. We draw from transformative justice for our conflict resolution practices, and we did it in public. So we did it for first our worker collective group that we were holding that, and then we took the outcomes of that and made them public to all of our co-op members. And then we put it on the internet. And so we did it in public to hold ourselves accountable. And it was imperfect and it was not finished. And we were like, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good, and let's actually put it out there. And just in that, the people who were at the center of that were like, just the fact that this organization was willing to put its brand at risk to actually walk this proves to me that I am important and that my conflict, my needs are centered here. And that was an ingredient in the successful recipe to make it actually stick and work. So it was one little moment, just being accountable.
Awesome.
Appreciate that. Let's clap it up, y'all. Appreciate that share, Kate, AKA Sassy. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? I have one right here, yes.
Hey everybody, Aliska. I'm not from a co-op. I'm representing Cooperative Fund of Northeast, but I'm honored to be working here. I've only been here since November, but the reason why I even accepted the job is because of the transparency that they had in working towards having better efforts toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's stated on the website in their strategic plan. They talk about it regularly internally. They talk about it with partners. They've been transparent about it that way in introducing new programs. They acknowledge why it's even important to them now, literally saying things like, we do really good at serving white people, but we want to do better at serving everybody else. So that's something that really made me say yes to being here.
Thank you for that. Hey, yo, clap it up, y'all. Because it's like, you know, put it out there and make it happen. And being intentional around how you're showing up. And so I have a question that I'm bringing back to the stage. And it is, what can we do about DEI washing? Essentially, when DEI initiatives are focusing on culture and implicit bias, instead of doing power shifting and redistribution, white managers and CEOs maybe are interested in DEI, but they aren't interested in real material shifts in power.
It has to be, I mean, you have to push it. It can't be comfortable. It cannot be something that is a fad or, you know, just to be able to say you did it. Like it has to be pushed to that place, and I think that's a question of how do you do that collectively, and how do you hold people accountable? And you know, sometimes it's messy and it's the middle of the journey. You don't have it figured out, but those people that are resistant have to be held accountable.
Accountability, pushing. What if you're tired?
You mean like DEI fatigue tired?
Yeah.
So DEI fatigue, I think, is a construct and an excuse for white privilege not to do the work. I have been Black my entire life. I'm not tired.
And so as we close this out and understanding it's about action, transparency, honesty, accountability. Ladies, what's one thing you would like to gift to the audience? In thoughts, in theory, in quote?
I'm the possibility of people serving other people passionately. I'll say that again. I'm the possibility of people serving other people passionately, and I would invite you to join me to do the same.
Yes, 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 yes.
I would say don't let fear stop you. We're all afraid a lot of the time, and that's where the growth and change happens. So kind of live in that and accept that and move on. That's all
Let's
I'll
give
say.
it up for Allison, y'all. And I'm gonna tell y'all this, it starts with you, so stop making excuses and start moving and getting into action. Yo, clap it up for yourselves and clap it up for our panelists. It's been a pleasure.
That was so quick.
I know.
Pity the group that has to come next, huh? Okay, little quick quiz. I can't tell if it's up there. So, without looking up, who can tell me what the theme is for this year's conference? Not you. No, you don't get to do it. What is it? Rooted, resilient, and ready, right? So, as Doug told us yesterday, our co-ops are a proven way to do business, strengthen communities, and tackle critical challenges because they are rooted in our co-op identity, right? And it's innovation that makes us resilient and ready to tackle those challenges. So our next panel is going to bring the perspective. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. You're going to have to wait for the next panel for a few minutes. Sorry, I didn't get it in my notes. We had to make a little adjustment this morning, so we're making a little adjustment to counter that this afternoon. So I get to introduce NCBA's Vice President of Cooperative Relations. Isn't that a great title? Isn't that a great title? The fabulous Tamala Blaylock.
Okay, this will be quick and this will be fun. Thank you all who engaged in the different games that we have had. And now it's time to award prizes. So yes, get excited for the prizes. Now, actually following the DEI session is perfect for this because I realized as we were watching the leaderboard that our prizes were constructed for those who live in the domestic United States of America. And we need to evolve that to be better in 2024, but we did pivot, we did make adjustments. So therefore, everyone who has earned a prize is going to win one, and that prize will be fantastic. So, also, as a governance nerd, realize that perhaps the governance or the explanation of the governance or rules for the photo contest just may not have been clear because we had to adjust how we awarded that. So, winning, we have 3 prizes going for the photo awards. So for the best NCB cutout photo, that goes to Karen Miner. Congratulations, of St. Mary's University. You have won complimentary 2024 impact registration. Okay, and to our next 2 winners of the photo contest, you will be winning a Cabot cheese gift box. The first one is Chris Urson of Isthmus. Yeah. And the second winner for our domestic sponsor photo booth, the lovely Twin Pines with our sponsors in the clouds, is Liska Wilson of Cooperative Fund of New England. All right, now going up the leaderboard. Now we have some winners of, we're acknowledging different leaderboards. So there are 2 honorable mentions who also receive Cabot cheese gift boxes. They include Sharon Mallory of the 2020 Farmers Co-op and Geneva Kilgore of Agroecology. All right, going up the leaderboard, I'm gonna do the top 5, but I'm gonna call one person out. She would have gotten a Cabot cheese gift box, but she told me on Tuesday that if she wins any more cheese, since she won the cheese for a year last year, that she will no longer be married, according to her husband. So Cynthia Holden, in lieu of winning more cheese and perhaps having marital problems at home, we are going to gift you with a 2024 registration to Impact. So congratulations for your engagement there. All right, so on the under 5, we have Kate Sassy Sassoon of Sassy's Facilitators wins a cheese box. Jessica Lewis of Mobu Enterprises wins a cheese box. Nicole Villano of Deep Roots Market wins a cheese box. And Maggie Johnson of NASCO, you win a cheese box. We will email you your certificate and you'll be able to cash it in immediately. Okay, so to our international living attendees who cannot win a cheese box because it has to be mailed within the United States. We'll get to the top 4 of our international. We have winning a 2024 impact registration, Kathy Statz, longtime cooperator. Okay, and then for our top 3, you all get a 2024 impact registration, and you all 3 have swag prizes that you can take with you, which are available at the registration desk with your names on them. So first we have JV Pangan, who has been incredibly engaged, taking lovely pictures. We love to see it, amazingly engaged. And then we have Timothy B. Sakaya, again, incredibly engaged, spreading the love and joy around. In addition to 2024 impact registration, you also have a prize you can take with you that will fit and ship with you. And then our top winner of the leaderboard, also with their own swag gift in 2024 impact registration, is Francois Hastier, which is a surprise to no one who's been looking at the leaderboard. I mean, like, hit the top of the leaderboard and then just stay there. So very impressive. And then to our top U.S. domestic winner, who will win the one-year Cabot cheese box, is, so every month for a year. And I hope that it makes your marriage better and not create anything difficult. And that is Barbara Johnson of Alaska Credit Union Development Center. So thank you all for engaging, for keeping connected. This Impact Conference has really been awesome to see you all getting together. I mean, the meetups, different people going to dinner, singing karaoke, going to the Blacksonian, also known as the African American Museum of History and Culture. It's been fantastic. So thank you all for your engagement and impact. And now I'll bring back up our lovely board director, Karen Zimbelman.
Thank you so much, Tamala, for not letting me forget that. That's important stuff. Okay, so now we've got a panel of emerging leaders, young co-op leaders and scholars, and that includes, I think the names are here, Leslie Callie, Shanique Ross, Rebecca White, and Alexis Woodhouse, and they're joining us up here to tell us about innovation and how innovation, what innovation looks like from where they're sitting today in the co-op space. So come on up.
We did bring our shades in case we need them.
We
did. Thank you all for joining us in our panel. I'm looking forward to our conversation. As Karen mentioned, we're going to be talking about innovation kind of through our experiences and the eyes of our young emerging leaders, cooperative scholars. We'd like to thank our sponsors, certainly CDF and CLS, for bringing us together and helping us swap ideas, see what works, what's inspiring, what we want to leave behind. And I think it can't really be overstated the amount of inspiration that's been in this room over the past couple of days. There's so many problems that cooperatives can be such useful tools to solve, and there's plenty of work to do. So thank you for joining us. You can see our floating heads above, probably. So I'm just going to get us started with asking our panelists what attracted you to the cooperative movement, and dig a little bit into your personal story. Tell us not only what your first cooperative kind of influence was or opportunity, but why you are sticking with cooperatives, or what's the through thread.
Yeah. Do you want me to start? Or you want
Sure.
to go ahead? Okay,
Yeah.
I guess, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexis Woodhouse. I'm the Senior Specialist of Publications and Operations at NRECA, and I work specifically with RE Magazine. That is a super long title. I need to find some kind of acronym since we do that in the co-op world. But I was really drawn to co-ops because I grew up in a rural community in southwestern Wisconsin in Westby. If you have heard of it, I'm surprised. There's only like 2,000 of us. So it's really, really small, but we're an agriculture farming community. And so I just kind of like grew up around co-ops and just thought that everybody was super familiar with them. And then I get out into the real world and realize that it's not as common as you might expect. So realizing like the broader implications of cooperatives, I've really wanted to dedicate my time and talents in helping communities like mine foster the next generation of leaders.
So hi everyone, I am Chinique Ross, go by China, and I'm an attorney by trade, so don't judge me for that. But I was introduced into co-ops in law school when I became the research assistant to Professor Renee Hatcher, who is the supervising attorney of the Solidarity and Business Economy Enterprise Clinic at USC Law in Chicago. And I assisted her writing a research paper that delved into the historical context of cooperatives in Africa and Southern America, and how that can be used in the U.S. economy to kind of turn the tide and really, one, give us autonomy and our power back and shift our economy to somewhere where everything is sustainable for all of us and not just certain groups. And I've stayed in the work because I think cooperatives are such a beautiful thing as a historical context for underrepresented communities. And that's what I went to law school to do, to help those communities and help people that look like me. So,
Awesome.
Yeah. For me, sorry to the people that have heard this story today multiple times. I wish I could say that I was introduced to cooperatives or grew up knowing about cooperatives. That wasn't the case for me, unfortunately. I came to learn about cooperatives much later in my college career. I want to say around junior, sophomore year in college, and all of it was by chance, I like to say. I am an economics major, international studies as well, and the opportunity sort of presented itself to me once I declared my major for me to go into the finance corporate track. And I knew deep inside that that's not necessarily what I wanted to do, but I wanted to explore a social side of economics, right? And so in thinking of that, I had the opportunity to join a fellowship program at the Colin Powell School where I go at City College of New York, and that fellowship program has a social justice component. And I feel fortunate that I was paired with a professor and also today a mentor to me from the School of Labor and Urban Studies. And so she was sort of the stepping stone for me to learn about cooperatives and to learn that there was an alternative economic model within economics that I can explore, learn more about, and sort of get a bigger dive in it, right? So I'd like to give her a shout out, Rebecca Larry. So she provided that opportunity, and I think what was so transformative in that experience is that fellowship program not only allowed me to have a year's worth of training, workshops, right, all related to social justice, but it also it culminated in an internship opportunity. And so throughout that year, I not only was introduced to work around worker cooperatives, I also got to take classes at the School of Labor and Urban Studies. But in addition to that, I was working with Rebecca along doing research on cooperatives and getting to meet people, getting to interview people that were doing the work within the industry. So I come to the world of worker cooperatives sort of in a very untraditional space.
I love how differently we've kind of been exposed to and gotten into cooperatives. I also didn't know about cooperatives as a kid. We shopped at the co-op, and that to me was like bulk bin food, which is everybody loves. I think the context of how I kind of formed my personal identity is part of what brought me back to co-ops. So growing up queer in a rural area in a single parent household, I'm always looking at systems from a 30,000-foot view, looking at systems and power and ideas and seeing how they filter through. So I like plants, I like places, I like how co-ops tie people to place in a really impactful way. And when I moved back to my rural community, the cooperative footprint of the Hanover Co-op food stores can't really be understated or overstated. So I sought them out as an employer, and I was worker bee in the produce department, managing people and operations, working directly with our farmers and setting up our, I would say, some of our most impressive solidarity economy work with the contracts that we do with local and regional food. And now I'm working in public and government affairs, which is a pretty unique position to be in at a food co-op or a consumer co-op. And so, yeah, I'm carrying the cooperative difference, the through line of morality through a lot of the work that I do. And I'm really grateful to be able to do it in partnership with the Hanover Co-op because a lot of people in the area see us as a big business. We have that big consumer cooperative footprint. We do about $88 million of sales a year. So I can enter into business conversations as a big business and then really surprise people with my cooperative morals. So yeah, I think that rounds us out, who we are, why we're here, what we're doing. Awesome. Thank you for populating the Mentimeters. It's great to have a little bit of feedback on the screen up here. I think to get us started, I'd love to know, either with the co-op that you're working with now or with your history of how you've seen cooperatives, what significant issues do you see your cooperative or cooperatives in general experience that limit their impact or prevent them from fully operationalizing their mission? Because that's kind of the crux of what we've been picking apart as a group over the week with the St. Mary's course on Monday and talking about governance, things like that. How are we best set up to do what we want to do?
So I guess one of the challenges that rural electric cooperatives have in particular is a lot of times we always talk about the fact that, you know, we are the reason that the lights turned on, and we talk about this older story that doesn't necessarily resonate with people like younger members today. You know, like that's it was super important work, absolutely, but you know, it's not going to get somebody really excited about, you know, being engaged in the cooperative and really kind of having ownership of it. It's like, okay, well that's a long time ago now, like what can you do for me now? And so I think a challenge that we have with rural electric cooperatives is that's kind of the story that we tend to tell. And we kind of need to think about, I mean, it's an important story, but we need to kind of think about how to reframe it and, you know, engage our next generation of members in a way that like really resonates with them. So one way that NRECA has done that, we have this young adult member engagement initiative called YAMI. Just to throw another acronym out at all of you. And that's like, you know, engaging those younger members in a way that like is a little bit more like with the times, I guess. We certainly touch on that story, but it's not only about that. It's about like next generation working development. It's about rural development. It's about opportunities that cooperatives can lead, and we're just so much more than just turning the lights on.
Yeah, the changing needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
So representing cooperatives as an attorney, frequently see issues with one, funding, which is important. We all need money. A lot of cooperatives struggle, just like with regular businesses, especially minority businesses, with access to adequate funding to run overhead expenses, finding what's out there. I think cooperatives also kind of straddle this line of, do I want to go the route that traditional corporations go and seek funding that way, or do I go this alternative route of securities transactions that I know nothing about? Which leads me to the point of adequate legal support and representation. There aren't enough attorneys in this space that are, I don't know, they don't know enough about cooperative law. Or they don't know enough about how the organizations themselves are ran. So it's important for attorneys and law students to be in the space and see all of you on the ground and see why you do what you do, so that we can creatively think to help you bring in funding, look at those state statutes and see how you can bring in third-party investors, but without compromising your membership, or bring in money through those non-membership patronage and things like that. So constantly trying to like fuel the movement on the attorney side to help cooperatives fuel their own movement.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think we talk about being in relationship a lot of the time with our partners, and I'm on a caretaker board for a small multi-stakeholder cooperative, and we have received quite a bit of legal advice, but I haven't necessarily always thought about, you know, starting that relationship and building the capacity and the knowledge and the understanding before the need is there. So that's a really great point. Yeah. Leslie, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, for me, I mean, just given my experience, and I feel like I'm in a position right now where I was working in a cooperative, and I finished a certificate program that focuses on cooperatives as well. And I've transitioned into a new role where I am working with majority students, college students that are preparing for the next step in their life, right? And so I feel a great amount of privilege in getting to work closely with students, either through fellowship programs. I connect a lot with alums of the college as well, and you know, so just taking that into perspective, I feel that something that could be done more and that I would love to see more in the co-op space in general is building bridges, building pipeline programs for those recent grads, for those juniors and seniors that are looking for an opportunity to get involved, or might not know necessarily that this alternative exists, right? So how can we work to build it into the programs that we have available and through the organizations that you all have, that you all are a part of, to make it so that that pipeline exists, right? I bring in my own story. I wouldn't be here today, I wouldn't be in the program, and I wouldn't have met so many amazing people had it not been through that first introduction that allowed me to learn about cooperatives, and that also gave me an opportunity to work and get a real sense of what it was like to work with a cooperative, and to do research about cooperatives, right? And I think...
Yeah. No, go ahead. You guys are putting good things in the chat. We'll circle back.
Yeah. So, I think there's frameworks to do that, and I am happy to share that we have a climate policy fellowship program, right? And I know it's not directly linked to the co-op space, although we can make it, and we did speak about it yesterday. But I like to bring up that particular framework because it is meant to give students that are, again, rising juniors, rising seniors, who might otherwise not have experience in doing research or policy-related work, or just work in the industry of climate change and policy, right? It was developed, and I was a part of the first cohort, the inaugural cohort. It's meant to give them an opportunity to build up their resume so that once they do graduate, they have that experience. And I think that's also transformative because you're early on in your career and you're sort of faced with all these questions of what can I do now? Where do I go? And if you're presented with the right opportunity at the right time, then most likely that's going to be something that influences the career choices that you make. That happened with me. I was given the opportunity to, again, work with this organization that focused on cooperatives, and I've been focused on that ever since, right? I haven't lost that spirit of wanting to get involved with cooperatives. So I feel like there's, it's not, by no means is it easy. I know it takes time, it takes resources to develop that into the programs that you have for your organization. But I think if we are true about connecting with youth and giving youth an opportunity to get involved in the co-op space, then I think we need to start talking about ways to integrate them and help them take their first step into the space when they're not aware of it.
To share the cooperative lens and have them apply it in future scenarios. Yeah. Let's call out some of the things that you guys are entering into Mentimeter. I would really love to know. So one comment is, so the question, what significant issues does your co-op experience that limit its impact and prevent it from fully operationalizing its co-op identity? One person said, replicating authoritarian and hierarchical organizational structures in movement, support, advocacy, and funding orgs rather than implementing democratic management. Who are you? Where are you? And let's be friends. That's amazing. I mean, if you would like to stand up and say a little bit more, I'd love to hear what sector you're working in, or if it's just a blanket problem that you're seeing. And if you're not comfortable, that's okay.
Over there. Yep.
Can we get him a mic? Yep. No?
And do you want to join us on stage?
Yeah. Thanks, Kirsty.
Hi, I'm Fred from the Northwest Cooperative Development Center in Washington State. So I do cooperative development work and cooperative education. I think folks that know me know that I bang on about this all the time. But even in the last session, right, they were talking about cynicism or like manager-initiated DEI programs, or really anything where like those face headwinds when you don't have buy-in from staff. And a big part of the reason you don't have buy-in from staff is because they're not participating in those decision makings. And then we're also talking about you got to walk the walk and talk. You have to talk the talk, but also walk the walk, and you know, put our value of democracy that sort of underpins the model, right? That's about wanting to intensify the democratic character of social relations in society more broadly. And so in our movement organizations, we often are not reflecting that like intensifying the democratic character of our organizations inside, even as we sort of are telling our co-op clients and the organizations that we support or fund that that's what they need to be practicing. So yeah, it's just something I think a lot about.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. I think something that we talked about as a group is kind of what does it feel like to be either an employee of your co-op or a member of your co-op, and kind of like what are the feelings that we want our members and our employees, depending on the structure of your co-op, to have. So we want to feel like we're making progress and that there's some kind of satisfaction in the work that we're doing. We want to acknowledge that there is a lot of work that we're doing, and we also certainly groups of the co-op are going to have to be uncomfortable. If we're waiting for consensus all of the time, we're probably way behind the 8 ball, right? So we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable, having that, being slightly less risk averse, so that we can empower people who aren't necessarily usually in decision-making places to test the waters. I think that's something that I see. There's usually, so I'm privileged to be in a really close mentor-mentee relationship with my colleague in public and government affairs, and he always says his job is to, give me the business cards, like give me the Rolodex, and it's a literal Rolodex, and then get out of the way. And I really appreciate that approach because one co-op, and congratulations, one co-op. We're so complex and there's so many pieces. So there's so much knowledge that has to happen. Like once people walk in the cooperative door, I've been in with my co-op for about 5 years now, and I feel like I'm still understanding co-ops in general. I'm still learning. And I want to learn about my organization specifically, but I don't want to learn so much that I'm backed into a corner and I see why nothing works. So just being aware of what information you're sharing and then you're passing on to emerging leaders or people who are moving into decision-making roles at your co-op, and then allowing for them to make different decisions than you would make if you were in that seat, and being okay with that, and understanding that that's one, part of the democratic process, and two, part of the evolution of social understanding. Thank you. Great. Glad we went there.
It's like a TED Talk.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so how does your co-op innovate in partnership with various groups? So I think, Leslie, you were speaking well to how it's so helpful to give students in particular, people entering into their careers, a lens of cooperation, because cooperative work can exist outside of co-ops. We know that is like so true. But what do those kind of community partnerships look like with either other co-ops, with advisors, other organizations? Are there any inspiring ones you want to call out? Okay.
So I can speak to 2 scenarios. So at least at the college level, I was working at the Drivers Cooperative, and part of the program, the way that I got involved with them was through my college. And so they were working on building partnerships with CUNY specifically, and I went to City College of New York. The partnership was meant to help students sort of come in and learn about the cooperative, but also provide support for key areas in the cooperative. And so that's how I got involved. I started off with business partnerships and outreach to members of the co-op. So I'd like to say that that's an example of a way that they were able to partner with a university. They got students that were interning for them, but at the same time, students from those colleges got to see a different alternative in the rideshare industry. So that was my experience. But as well, we were able to collaborate with our local credit union, the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union. They offered financial resources, financial support, and a technical assistance to the co-op and to its co-op members. So anybody that was interested in opening a bank account, people that were interested in learning about financial planning, they also had partnership with a financial planner of the co-op. So I mean, that became very important for a lot of the members of the cooperative, because it meant that they had an avenue for getting financial support. And they, for the most part, I want to say that they were the ones that we looked towards whenever we needed to do referrals to our members. Yeah.
Like that added value of the membership to the co-op.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, I don't have any direct examples, but I will just say to Leslie's point, we really can't talk about innovation without the collaboration piece. So reaching out to those universities, reaching out to other professionals, law schools, clinics, getting that legal help, getting that financial help, even just exploring the cooperatives around you. So looking around the room and you see, oh, this cooperative has been around for so long, they do this really well. So who else is doing something that I need to learn how to do very, very well? So just tapping in that way, the mentorship piece in that collaboration. So how can this co-op and this co-op come together and we teach each other and share these resources like we're supposed to do, like the principals have told us to do. So really tapping into that, I think, is so important if we want to move the movement forward.
And then I would just add that, electric co-ops have, we work on projects that are as large as what like Jeffrey Connor was talking about earlier with the New Era funding that is going to be going for like the broadband initiatives to roll out. But then, also on a smaller scale, we'll have like the Red Leg, the Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant Funds. All of that funding can go and like support local initiatives, which could be, helping local community buy a fire truck, or just general funding that is provided to help small communities meet the needs. So I think there's a wide variety, and because NRECA is so large and has 900 member co-ops, that looks really different. But I think it's important just to know that we're really looking at the individual communities and trying to tailor those solutions to what they need on a day-to-day basis.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, that's really cool. I guess one example that I'd love to share briefly is, so the Hanover Co-op is part of a group of major employers in the area that is convened in what they call corporate council by a local nonprofit, and we try to address kind of like the issues of our community, because the co-opism is that when the community succeeds, the co-op will succeed. And affordable housing is a really big issue in the Northeast, and something that we've spoken to great lengths about on corporate council. And one project that has emerged from our partnering with other local businesses, we're the only co-op. There's, it's a pretty rural community. So there's a hospital, there's the school, there's the bank, et cetera, et cetera. But we banded together as a group of 8 employers. So it was kind of a subgroup of employers from the larger convening group that felt like we really need to do something about housing. We can't just allow these dynamics to continue to play out in this way. So we worked with Evernorth, which is a lending partner, and Twin Pines Housing to create the Upper Valley Loan Fund, which, so between the 8 employers, we fundraised about, we put in about $10 million to this loan fund, where the contributing bodies receive 1.5% interest rate, which is very low. So it's a 15-year loan. We're losing money on it, but we're creating a more sustainable capital stack to accelerate the affordable housing projects in the area. So having the co-op be a voice at the table where these decisions were being made, we were able to say, no, you can't get 3% back on your money. Like, we'll do 1.5%. And then the negotiation, how about 2%? 1.5%. And we certainly weren't able to contribute the most money to the fund. We contributed $100,000, and the biggest contribution was $2.5 million. But for our co-op, that $100,000 felt like $2.5 million. So partnering with other businesses and sharing the cooperative lens, I think, is also a really beneficial tool. Calling others to the cooperative table and allowing them to go through the process of like rethinking the way that they're making decisions for their business, and yeah, allowing there to be space for people to have a little bit of a learning journey in the partnership, and just staying on the course. I think that's been one of the things that I've been most proud to like represent in this work. So, right. One thing I would really like to understand, I've been thinking about this a lot because I come from a large consumer co-op. We're large, we're old. We are staying the course, which is why it's so difficult to turn the boat around. Is how do you understand cooperative membership? Or how does your organization understand it? And like, is there an evolution there? Or yeah, how closely do you read your bylaws?
You can start on that end,
Okay. So I mean, with my previous experience, I want to say that there were challenges to it because it is a ever-changing industry, and I want to say majority of members were either new immigrants that were coming here, but also just in general, like they didn't have like generations here in the United States. And so with that came language barriers and cultural, we had to address like cultural situations too. And I think that created like some challenges for us, but there was efforts for us to reframe like what membership looked like, what kind of outreach had to be done in order to reach more people, and just make sure that everybody was represented and that people had an understanding of what it meant to be a part of the cooperative. But that's not to say that there were still challenges, right? Because it is a cooperative, and we had the challenge of resources being difficult to access. But there was conversations about trying to make increasing the number of membership meetings, catering to members so that we could have something in the afternoons, some meetings at midday, so that other members that are doing their shift from day to night were also able to access. And also looking into translation services, I think, was something that needed to be done, because again, it was a large membership, and within that you had people that felt more comfortable in different languages, right? So, and just the way that the industry worked. So I think that was one way, and just trying to figure out like the balance between how we structured meetings so that it would be accessible to people that were not necessarily able to sit down and look at a computer and participate. We had to cater also to people that were on the road, and we had to be flexible in terms of how those were carried out. But it's definitely something that was an added challenge because of the nature of the industry. So
I like that. I think it's important to put those policies to work. Like, one, put the policies in writing. Understand that they are living documents. Those bylaws are living documents. They can be changed. They can adapt and evolve with you and your cooperative. Also being aware that every cooperative is different. So how you all make decisions is not going to be the same way another cooperative makes decisions. And really just putting those in place. So if it's policies around DEI, if it's policies around what membership looks like, or what members are bringing to the table, I think writing that down and being very intentional about what that means to your cooperative will set the tone for how you move forward, and then constantly revisiting that with the cooperative and the decision makers to, okay, let's reassess this. What's not working here? Why isn't it working? Let's do some redrafting. Like, let's get some help here so we can continue to move forward.
Yeah.
And then just with, I think from my rural electric cooperative experience, just like living back home on the farm with my parents, growing up, like, I think a lot of people, are members, but don't necessarily, with rural electric cooperatives, they're members, but they're just like, well, this is just where I get my electricity from. So they don't really feel that ownership. So we have to have a continual, education around like what cooperatives are, how the members need to be engaged. And also, like, the cooperatives have responsibility to be meeting the members where they are. I think, and this is kind of a silly example, but I think about an annual meeting that one co-op near my hometown was trying to have during COVID, and they, were not really sure how to gather people during a pandemic, but they really needed to pass this bylaw. And so what they did was they partnered with local businesses, and they decided to bring everybody into like the drive-in movie theater, and then had like everybody drive through and then parked at the theater, and then they projected everything on the screen. They used the radio station to broadcast the announcements. They had people vote by, initially it was lights, but then everybody started honking, and they like preferred that much more. So, it was just like a really fun and engaging piece. And then since 2020, there has been like a request by, members to like have the drive-in meetings rather than like the traditional like boring meetings that nobody wants to go to.
That's so fun.
Yeah, and so then now they're like incorporating like a car show, like it's a whole thing. But like the thing is, like, these can be fun, and you just have to think a little bit differently and outside of the box, but like the member engagement is there, but you just have to provide a space for that actually to happen.
Yeah, I love that. That is so fun.
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So you have a history with Farmers Union,
Yeah.
and I'm a member of the New England Farmers Union, and the story goes that Farmers Union is so strong because it always happened every Sunday in the basement of the church, and they fed people.
Yep, right, yep.
So yeah, getting people together somewhere where they want to be, somewhere where it's fun and engaging, and to your point, Leslie, like what that works for their family or their, the structure of their life. That's a really great point. I'd love to start the next prompt on the Mentimeter to keep you guys awake, involved. We're doing great. Okay, great. So taking stock of your own identity, what talents and ideas will you bring to your co-op to prompt innovation? It's a big question, but I would like to know. So take a minute, think about it, and we'll keep it going up here and then circle back to your responses. So how does the size or age of a co-op impact how it drives results in innovation? And so, we can answer that from our cooperative's perspectives, but for you two who aren't necessarily associated with a particular co-op, but are giving us insight into what we might not be looking at all the time, like kind of the wheels of what keep co-ops turning, how do you view size and innovation and age and innovation? So I really enjoyed what you were saying about the bylaws being living documents, and I'd love maybe some success stories of any co-ops that you know of that have that practice in their governance of evaluating their bylaws and changing them as the needs of their group change, because that feels so scary and foreign to me.
Yeah, so I've worked with a couple of co-ops that, so they specifically work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they provide services to other businesses and schools that need that assessment to come in, and they do that overlook, and they provide an action plan. And so that particular co-op, probably about 20 people, so that's where you see the bigger the co-op is and gaining consensus, it gets harder to make decisions or to get everybody on the same page. So they were in a place of constantly trying to figure out, okay, where can we get to a place where we're not caught up in the same corporate structure of the board makes decisions and we're stuck there and everybody else feels left out. And that comes in where you do your research and find other governance models or make your own. One particular co-op has instituted circle governance where there's not board of directors or there's not all these titles, but they're roles, and the roles change. So if you're in one role in one circle and you carry out your duty there, and then there's no need for decision making there anymore, you move to another role in another circle. And that way those talents and those skills and those inputs that are in the cooperative, they're constantly being circulated for all the decisions and moving abroad the cooperative.
Cool. That's inspiring. That's great. Leslie, would you have thoughts?
Yeah, for me, when it comes to size of the cooperative, I'm thinking in terms of involvement of new people in the co-op and making sure that you have that opportunity to mentor other people, other generations that are coming in. So I feel like because we were a little bit bigger in terms of size, it gave more of an opportunity, right, to do tasks and participate in different areas of the co-op, whether that was engagement, communications, business partnerships, or social media. It just lends that opportunity, right, to create programs where you can get involved in different ways. And I emphasize that again because I think it is important. And if you leave with something from here today from us and from me, is that I do encourage you to work on creating those types of programs, especially if you're a bigger cooperative. You have more key areas that might need support. I think there's opportunity there for you to pass that along and use that as an opportunity to help others that might not be familiar with the structure of a co-op, governance models, bylaws, that may not be familiar with that, and give them an opportunity to take some level of ownership, right, and participate in that area. So I think that's important. Even if you're a smaller cooperative as well, I mean, I think there's still opportunity there, absolutely. It just creates a more intimate group where you're able to share a little bit more about the day-to-day work that gets done in the cooperative, and in many cases, I feel that allows for you to create a team that is really involved, right? And I think that's where students or recent graduates could come in and play a key role.
Yeah. I hear kind of cultivating that sense of belonging from the beginning, you know, so like thinking about the journey of your members and like what it feels like to be a member in the beginning. And then as you start to understand the co-op and the systems and the different roles in the co-op, how the feeling of belonging evolves and the responsibility that comes with that. Yeah.
And I'll just keep my answer short and sweet. I think there's challenges at all different sizes. So like, you know, if you're a smaller cooperative, you may lack the staff or the funding, but you might have some more flexibility with like being able to implement those changes a bit quicker. And the larger sizes, there's maybe the abundance of funding and maybe staff available to you, but maybe there's more red tape and like bureaucracy to go through. Because I have seen many ideas that are like, you know, great, just get like stalled just because it's like there's too many other factors at play, and not to say that it's impossible to implement those things, but I think change just happens much more slowly.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So things that the audience is bringing to the co-op to prompt innovation, or to their co-op. Using humor to make challenging statements in a non-threatening way.
I like that one.
Yes. Holding space for a sense of play in business and governance meetings. Yes. Yeah, we've been talking about that a little bit as a group. Is like kind of the idea of professionalism. You know, so like we're gathering skills in our young careers, and we are becoming more professional. But like, what parts of ourselves are being left out of the conversation, and how does that hinder the conversation at large? You know, so I think there are a lot of areas we can all reflect on that, but you know, there's definitely something to be said about creating a culture that doesn't promote assimilation, right? So we want the outliers, we want the crazy ideas, and we want to give people the space to be able to dream something different into existence. I think that's kind of like the opportunity and the power of the idea of co-ops.
And I think, so we didn't get to touch on it, but age as well, having that youth in the co-op, or just the intergenerational learning and the experience is so important. So one, the co-op can grow. Two, you have succession planning. And listen, after that last panel, I'm scared to talk about diversity because they did such a great job.
We thought about just bringing them back.
Right.
Yeah.
Please come back on stage. But you have to have that diversity of thought. Like, you can't just have this one way of thinking. You have to bring in people that grew up differently than you, grew up in different places, so you can have that nuanced way of, they came up with this idea because that's what they know culturally, and that can impact your organization in such a big way. So it's, one, having that harsh assessment of, is there diversity in the room with us? Are there enough young people here to carry on the mission of the co-op? Do we need to rebrand the mission of the co-op? Like, where are we going with this? So I think having the younger generation there is so important, and they're all very intentional about what they want to do and how they want to be involved. And so I think somebody said earlier, giving the youth purpose. So it's like, once we have a purpose, we're ready to get put to work, but we also want to know that there's security and we have something that we own and can autonomize over.
Yeah. Yes. That's awesome. I guess let's do a few more. So I see emphasizing human relationships within the co-op, which I think is where all good ideas start. No good idea ever came from isolation. Let's see. Listen and be flexible. Escuchar y ser flexibles. Definitely. And being open to new ways of doing things, knowing it may require new capacities and capabilities, including money. Yes, we don't have to always work with only the things we see in front of us. Yeah, we can call in friends and resources, totally. I think we just have a few moments for kind of closing thoughts. Is there anything that's sticking out to you about the conversation that you'd like to highlight or resurface, or what's popping?
The last comment that you mentioned, I think, is one that resonated with me the most because, I've had conversations with people about potentially creating an opportunity to bring in, right, or to develop opportunities that helps bring in students that are exploring these types of areas in the co-op space, but don't necessarily know how to get into it. And some of the responses that I've gotten is, well, we do acknowledge that that's important, and we would love to do that, but it's just difficult to do that, right? To put in the resources and also the time, especially in co-ops. You're doing so much already, and that particular comment, I think, helps us reframe so that we think of this as, if we're trying to reach youth, again, it is worth it. It is worth the time and effort to develop a program like that, because in the long run, it is something that's going to benefit not just the co-op, but the movement in general, right? If we are able to expand the knowledge around the space to more people, more minds, especially young minds who are exploring sort of the next steps, then I think that's a win already, right? So I think it's well worth the time and effort. And to the money component of it, I feel like sometimes we just have to put ourselves out there and invest more time into doing the outreach and using membership, right, to do outreach to other organizations, universities, and schools, because just giving you the insights from where I work right now, there's often many resources available, right? But they're untapped resources because there's not a pipeline, right, developed there for you to access, right? In our case, we have a program where, again, we're able to fund internships. If your organization is not able to fund it, but we see that this organization is going to be of great benefit to the career development of a student, then we're able to provide the resources, right? And so that's just one out of so many higher ed opportunities that I think go just untapped when it comes to providing resources like that to access for students.
I really like thinking about investing in something where there's not a clear return on investment in terms of education, right? Because it's like, we all know now, it's no secret. College or furthering your education doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a clear next step or a clear return on the investment you're making in yourself. So how can we acknowledge that and say, if we are clear about what this investment is going to give us, then it's probably not innovative. So yeah, I love that.
My closing thought is, if you're in a beginning your career in cooperatives, just see if there's a mentor or somebody who wants to share this story. I think people are really, really passionate and are eager to help. And if you're in the opposite end and have been in cooperative space for a long time, look for the next generation of leaders and continue to tell the cooperative story. That's something that RE Magazine does. And if you're interested in how NRECA does that, I apparently got 400 copies of RE Magazine delivered to my house. So let me know. I will send you a box.
That's great.
But yeah, it's really important to just maintain those connections. I think about the fact that I was in the CLSI program in 2019. I met somebody at NRECA, and now I work for them. So those connections happen because we cooperate, and I don't take that lightly. So thank you guys for providing me the opportunity to get a job, I guess.
Yeah. That's great. I guess, I have a lot of thoughts mulling around in my head, but what I'm so excited about in terms of innovation with cooperatives is that it often does come back to that relationship piece. So I love that I can take the energy for the idea of the solidarity economy that I have and not come up with a business plan or an idea, but I'm going to pour that into connecting with the people around me and seeing where our worlds overlap, and sharing what's different about me, and also sharing where the stars align and where we can work together. And I think that's very poetic, very beautiful. So thank you all for sharing with us and listening. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. Good job, guys.
Yay.
Hang on just a second. Really, thank you so much. You all just queued up the best introduction to what's coming next, which is the Hall of Fame panel, looking at thoughts and inspiration from those who've made careers out of co-ops. So join us back here at 4 o'clock sharp.